Entitled mom can't accept that her 3-year-old child isn't a prodigy. Hey, last week, I started a job as a teacher. Perfect ground for finding entitled parents. Here's some background to start off with. I teach English to children, and while the school accepts children between 18 months and 12 years, my students are between the ages of 2 and 5. The school I work at only teaches English and has different levels based on your child's ability, where the teacher can use discretion to decide if the child can go faster or needs to slow down. Because of the coronavirus, the school also has mostly one-on-one lessons now, but because things are getting better where I am, the school also allows physical classes instead of online-only classes. I have this kid, we'll call him D. He's a 3-year-old boy with a local Chinese father and a mother who is traditionally Chinese. Where I live, English is the primary language of most people, though the command of English is a little skewed with plenty of slang. D's father could speak in Mandarin to his wife, REM. EM, however, could not speak any English at all and was Mandarin speaking only. This is where problem number 1 is. While I am local Chinese, I only grew up with English-speaking parents and grandparents, which meant I have almost no command of Mandarin even though I studied it as a second language for 12 years. Once I was out of school, my brain wrung out any knowledge of Mandarin like water out of a sponge. I can speak it at a barely conversational level, but can't explain anything in depth. The second lesson D came for was also my first day working there. While I was briefed on EM as she had been the one to sign D up for lessons, I was informed by my coworker that D's father would be the one dropping him off and picking him up. This was good news for me, because when we let the child go at the end of the lesson, we take a few minutes to go through with the parents/guardians on what the child learned, what they did well, and what they can improve on, along with any recommendations for them like speeding up or slowing down. It's hard for me to explain any of that in Mandarin, so if D's father was the one coming to pick him up, then talking to him was simple. Unfortunately for me, that was absolutely not the case. On D's first lesson with me, EM was the one to drop him off. He's only 3 years old, so we were doing a foundation class with him where we basically teach him 1 letter per hour-long class, how to say and write it, what sound the letter makes, and some simple words that start with said letter. Given that that was his first time seeing me, he was almost entirely unresponsive to anything I said. He kept trying to go out and find EM, would want me to open the door, and when I wouldn't because he couldn't just be running off, he'd try to shove his fingers in the gap in the door. He would not repeat after me or mimic my actions, and overall did not manage to learn much. I did manage to get him to say the 4 words that started with the letter B, but that was about all we managed to do in that hour. For all my Southeast Asian people out there, you know how our parents can be. You all also know traditional Chinese parents are even worse, and EM was just horrid. When I let D out to go back to EM, she was at first cordial, asking how he did in the class and what he learned. I explained to her that because this was D's first lesson with me, he wasn't as responsive, but that he did manage to say the 4 B words taught to him. Now during classes, we have 4 flashcards with the words they're supposed to learn, and we give these cards to the parents to keep in case they want to revise with their child at home. I prefer to give the cards to the kids to hold to reinforce that it's their responsibility to keep the cards safe. Plus, it helps them develop their motor skills when they have to hold stuff. When I gave D his flashcards, EM snatched it out of his hand and immediately pointed to the first one, Bubbles, demanding loudly for him to say the word. Since D was no longer in an environment where it was just me and him, he clammed up and wouldn't say anything. EM saw that as my failure. Cue our first terrible conversation. You already know who EM and D are, and me is. I don't need to explain that. This conversation was in Mandarin, with me speaking in broken Mandarin. As a side note, I can understand Mandarin but can't speak it. Another side note, parents aren't allowed to be in the classroom during lesson time. EM, what does this card say? D. EM, jabbing her finger into the card, what does it say? When D doesn't respond, I get a death glare from EM. EM, why doesn't he know how to say it? What do I pay you for? Me, ma'am, since this was his first lesson with me, I think he was shy and we didn't manage to get far in the material today. I assure you that. Em, what do I pay you for? I sent him here so he could learn English. Em glares at D and demands that he say bubbles again, but D is entirely clammed up and just shakes his head. Me, look ma'am, you need to understand that it was his first time seeing me, and he's 3 years old. He was able to copy what I said during class and point at the pictures associated with words. Em, then why can't he say it? D, tell me what this card says. Me, possibly because we're no longer in a quiet environment where it's just him with a teacher? He should warm up to me soon within the next class or two and become more receptive to the lessons. I'm sorry if the class today wasn't up to your standards, but please understand it is his first time with me. Em snorts at my comment, grabs D, and stalks off. I share some words with my coworkers, mostly us bitching about Em and my mentor confirming that she was just like that during D's very first lesson at the school with her. That concluded my first time meeting Em, but oh no, we're not quite done. Now it's time for today's lesson. She was even more horrible this time. She showed up 10 minutes late, thankfully with D's father too, and released D into my care. Today, I taught him the letter C, including the words car, cat, cow, and crab. He was a lot more receptive now that I figured out that he was more into physical actions and was able to say all 4 words, plus match the words to the pictures. The class itself was fun, but releasing him to his parents was not. Since D's dad was around, I spoke to him almost exclusively. I explained to him that D was doing well and became a lot more receptive to me and my lessons, but struggled with his penmanship since he couldn't get a good grip on a crayon and had a very light touch, so his movements were shaky. I also explained that he struggled to say car sometimes, since he mixed up how it sounded with cow, but D's dad was very understanding. I recommended he guide D in how to properly hold a pencil at home, and D's dad relayed all this in Mandarin to Em. Em looked pissed at me when D's dad mentioned to her my comments about D not being able to hold a crayon properly, but said nothing. The school also gives the child the activity book to bring home, and Dee's book today had a page with a car drawing you to cut out. My coworker had cut out the entire page so she could cut out the car itself with ease, and the car was colored in by D. Em only noticed the bit of the page that was still in the book, and blew her fuse. Em, where is this page? How can you give him such a terrible book? Huh? Where is the page? Why did you give my son something so terribly made? Me, ma'am, that page was cut out because there's a paper car cutout we needed to use. Here, the car is right here. I flipped the book over to the front page, where Dee's messily colored car cutout was tucked between the cover and the first page. Em's rage subsided a little, but she gave me the nastiest death glare. Em, oh, so he couldn't even color it properly. Humph. I wonder why I'm even paying you when you can't teach Dee how to color a picture. Let me say, teaching children how to hold a pencil is not my job. It is the parents' duty, and if they only expect him to practice for an hour every Saturday, that's their problem. Sounds nasty, but it's true. At this point, I'm exclusively speaking to Dee's dad and barely even looking at Em. Em has also gone back to jabbing her finger at the flashcards, demanding that Dee say what the words are. Em, shaking the car flashcard in Dee's face, say it. Say what this word is. Dee is visibly stressed, clutching his toy car and staring at Em but saying nothing. I decide to intervene. Me, pointing at Dee's toy car in his hands, Dee, do you know what that is? Dee immediately flashes me a big grin. Dee, car! I clap for him and give him a high five, offering Em a smile that only makes her scowl deeper. Pretty sure her muzzle lines and crow's feet are permanent now. I also notice that anytime Em talks, Dee's dad looks at her with such tiredness in his eyes, like he's regretting his marriage now. I finish explaining to Dee's dad on my recommendations for him to practice his penmanship at home. He thanks me, while Em grabs Dee's wrist and yanks him off, stalking off like she's some femme fatale. The school admin apologizes to me for even convincing Em to sign Dee up, saying he knew she was going to be trouble during the sign-up process. I just say it's fine, pack up, and leave. Now 3 hours later, I'm sitting here writing this, thinking if EM keeps her trash behavior up, she's going to grow up with a son that hates her. Can't believe I have to see EM every Saturday now. I hope she pulls D out, even though I love him dearly. EM is just going to keep making trouble every single week and find some reason to throw a shitstorm. Sorry this got so long, and thanks for reading. Being a teacher is just a great place for finding EMs like this, and I'm sure I'll have something new next week when I see her again. Edit, this really blew up, didn't it? Thank you all so much for your comments. I've been reading through each and every single one, and all the advice and love is really driving me to do better by D next time. You guys are right, I cannot let him down now because it's clear he won't get the love and attention he needs from EM. I will do right by him. Love you all.